So I kind of threw you in the deep end there, playing you a trailer of the ICAW False Assurance film. And you might have seen that trailer on your open day if you came to the university, either in person or virtually. And it was played for a reason, because I think it gives a really good definition of accounting. We're going to see on the next slide what the technical definition of accounting is, but I think it gives a much broader vision of what accounting is. And that for me is the language of business. And I'm not alone in that view. Warren Buffett, no less, one of the world's most successful investors, is very much of the view that you shouldn't be investing unless you understand the definition of accounting and you understand what accounting is all about. And that's what we're going to look at in this video. Once again, welcome to Financial Accounting 1. My name's Richard Cartwright. I'm a Principal Teaching Fellow here at the University of Southampton. I've worked here for the last 5 and a bit years. Prior to that, I worked at another university, but crucially, I started my career at KPMG in audit, which is where I got to grips with accounting for the first time. But what is accounting? Now, the technical definition of accounting is a process of identifying, measuring, recording, and communicating economic information. But as I've already said, that's a little bit dry. I'd like to introduce you to Economia, otherwise known as the Institute Lady, and she is the logo of my professional body, the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. And what we're going to do is explore the 3 items that she's pictured with. First, she's pictured with a rod. Now, this rod signifies command, the fact that accountants should be seen as authority figures. And quite rightly, they're professionally qualified, they're hugely experienced, and the information that they provide to management to help them with their decision making should be taken seriously. It doesn't necessarily mean that management have to follow the numbers, but they should view the numbers that have been provided, the information that's been provided by accountants, as rigorous. She's also pictured with a rudder, which you might think is a little bit strange for an accounting logo or a logo signifying something to do with finance. But the rudder signifies guidance. And the idea is that accountants' advice should be heeded, but it shouldn't change on a really regular basis. The advice that accountants provide should be there to help steward and guide a business over a long period of time. Now, of course, accountants' advice, like any other professionals, may have to change from time to time, but it shouldn't flip-flop around the place. It should be something that is consistent and provides a consistent guide and message over a long period of time, only changing when really necessary, rather than for the sake of opportunism. The final device that she's pictured with is a set of dividers. Now, again, this might seem a little bit strange, but actually, accountants' key skill set is measurement. Now, we typically think that accountants measure things in financial terms, and historically you're right, and principally that is their job. But certain things are relatively easy to measure in financial terms, and let's think about something like prices of inventory that a business has purchased. That's really straightforward. We've bought something, it had a prevailing price at the time, and we may just record it in the accounts at that value. Over time, though, the value of that inventory might change. Perhaps it's electronics or something perishable, and actually we now need to estimate that true value of that inventory now. Additionally, and increasingly, accountants are being required to value things that are not easily quantifiable in financial terms. And an example that's increasingly prevalent within business now is the price of things like environmental damage or carbon dioxide pollution. How do you truly value that? And I say one of the most exciting things really about becoming an accountant is not sort of that bean counting that we've been associated with in the past, but actually the exciting things that accountants are now having to quantify and measure in financial terms that they previously haven't had to in the past. Now, the University of Southampton's mission is to change the world, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic mission. And you might think it's a little bit strange that I think accountants will change the world. But I'm not alone. The Prince of Wales actually thinks that accountants are not only going to change the world, but potentially save the world too. And I'm going to look at how accountants are addressing what I think are the 4 major challenges facing society at the moment.
So what are these challenges? Well, I think the obvious one at the moment is COVID-19. But then in the UK, we have Brexit, which will be coming to a head in December and over the coming years as we move out of the transition agreement. Then we have the 4th Industrial Revolution, and finally climate change. So some pretty big issues, but let's take them one by one. So how are accountants helping companies deal with COVID-19? Sure, we're not doctors, we're not nurses, scientists, virologists, epidemiologists, or indeed other key workers who have helped deliver food and helped us get through the absolute worst of lockdown. But accountants have been crucial to helping businesses survive and, in some cases, thrive during this very difficult period. Accountants have been preparing cash flow forecasts to help distressed businesses. They've also been providing advice to businesses too when they've been struggling to obtain finance. Governments have unveiled huge numbers of policies to help businesses, but those businesses who've been desperately trying to survive haven't necessarily had the time to absorb all of that information and understand readily how they apply for all of this help. So you've got accountants working in professional practice, providing advice to their clients to help them understand how they apply for government schemes, how they obtain new types of finance too. So that's on the negative side. On the positive side, some businesses like Amazon and other online retailers, amongst other industries, have really thrived during this time. And I've spoken to colleagues who are working in industry, some working at online retailers, where actually they've come across real difficulties. They're having really challenging times obtaining sufficient finance to expand their operations to cope. Banks are full of doom and gloom, and actually trying to get that message across that actually they need a little bit more money, they need a little bit more finance in order to help their business to thrive, has been the role of accountants. They've also been carefully managing their cash, not because they're having difficulty paying their bills, but because they need to purchase inventory while still paying their staff. So careful cash management has been really important to help their businesses expand and develop. They've also been speaking to suppliers to negotiate new credit terms in order to allow them to take on the additional stock that's needed. So accountants have been crucial professionals in helping businesses and organizations survive and thrive during this difficult lockdown. Let's move on to Brexit. Now, some of you, if you've joined us from overseas, may wonder what on earth Brexit is and why it keeps coming up in the news. It's based around the UK's decision to leave the European Union in 2016. You might think that would have already have happened, but as the UK population knows, this thing takes time. We're now at the end of what's called a transition period, which will be ending at the 31st of December 2020. And this is effectively the end of the status quo, which has existed between the UK and the European Union for a really significant period of time, since joining in the mid-1970s. And basically, this is the end of the free movement of goods and services across the UK and European borders. Now, why are accountants involved? Surely this is all about politics. Well, it isn't. An awful lot of the implications that are associated with Brexit relate to accounting, and crucially the fact that the UK will no longer be able to import and export goods tariff-free unless we reach a deal. Now, accountants have been involved in trying to push for a deal and trying to develop a deal between the UK and European Union. But also, accountants are helping businesses respond to the prospect that there may not be a deal, and indeed that tariffs and VAT regimes will change substantially for the first time in approximately 40 years. And businesses and accountants are working together to understand the implication on cash flow, on profit margins, and things like that. You may not have heard of the 4th Industrial Revolution, but I just want you to think about the way that technology is impacting business, and we've clearly seen that in 2020 already. In terms of what the 4th Industrial Revolution encompasses, I want you to think about the ABCD. A is for artificial intelligence, B for blockchain, C for cybersecurity, and D for advanced data analytics. The world is awash with technology and data in a way that it never has been ever before. And accountants are using that data, those technologies, to help businesses make improvements in efficiencies, helping businesses reach their customers in a more effective way. Accountants are also concerned about the security of all of the data and financial information that they have available to them. Now, I mentioned that I think accountants are going to change the world, and the Prince of Wales potentially thinks accountants are going to save the world. Those are some pretty bold claims. But accountants do have a crucial role in helping businesses, organizations, and governments achieve the UN Global Goals for Sustainable Development. Now, what do I mean? Accountants aren't necessarily experts in climate change, life below water, and potentially aren't going to be involved directly in alleviating inequality, poverty, and trying to help the world achieve gender equality, amongst other things. Wrong. Accountants do have a crucial role, and it comes from that word account. Accountants have a really crucial role in measuring all of these metrics and trying to make sure that those who are in a position to try and help achieve these goals are held to account for their performance. Now that means accountants are going to have to move away from the financial world and look at a whole variety of different metrics that they're not necessarily used to involved in to date, and get to grips in how to measure them, account for them, audit them, and then crucially hold those in a position of responsibility to account for their performance.
We've moved relatively quickly from that small dictionary definition of accounting into something much broader and hopefully something much more interesting. On the next slide, I've included some hyperlinks that I would like you to check out. They'll provide you a bit more information about how accountants are helping to deal with COVID-19, helping to deal with the impact of Brexit, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and their potential role in dealing with the UN Global Goals for Sustainable Development.
Here are those links that I was just talking about. You can also access them through the learning module. I want you to take part in a survey, basically answering the question as to whether or not you think accountants are going to save the world. In addition to that, I have uploaded some questions on the discussion board that I want you to respond to. You can either use the discussion board, or indeed you can drop me a tweet at InsightfulRich.
Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you go through all of the resources and the rest of this learning module and have a go at that formative quiz at the end. If you have any questions, as I've said before, use the discussion board, or indeed raise them in one of the live sessions that we'll be hosting this week. Thanks again for watching.